We have lost Tom. We are live, but we've lost Tom. Hello, everybody. It's Ross here, and I am on my own. I had a guest. I hit the live button, and here I am on my own. Aha, Tom is back.
I keep having this button that says you aren't being recorded.
Okay.
I don't know
But
why.
it says now recording is in high quality, so I think we're okay.
All right. Well, I can't see you either, but
you can't see me.
No, because there's this little box that says you aren't being recorded, and God knows why. So
this is very odd. This is very odd. This is, the joy of technology. You have these things, and we've been, we made the decision to try a sort of upstart brand in Riverside, but I'm starting to potentially regret my my decisions because it doesn't seem to be working all the time.
Yeah, I respect the fact that you wanted to start with a new company. I get you there, but yeah, it's not what you want. I understand.
Well, so we've got two choices here, Tom. We can keep going, or we can reset and try a different tack on another day. I'm not sure how you feel.
I think we're going to be fine. I say we go, and if you don't like the product, we'll reschedule and we'll do another day.
Right. Okay. Right. Let's do it. Cool.
I'm game for anything, so let's do it.
Okay. Well, let me kick it off with some fancy graphics. You are listening to 10 More Questions, a podcast lovingly created by the people of Nicework, a company building and activating brands for rebels, dreamers, and pioneers that people actually care about. It's no secret that you need a strong brand, but what exactly does building one entail, and how can you ensure your brand both stands out and supports the business? In 10 More Questions, we explore the relationship between business and brand, chatting to thought and industry leaders about exactly how they turn a brand from a cost center into a company asset. As always, I'm your host, Ross Drakes, and today with me I have Tom Searcy, a nationally recognized author, speaker, and expert on large account sales. He's ranked amongst the top 10 global sales professionals. He's led multiple companies from under 10 million to over $100 million in revenue. His large account sales system has helped companies land over $22 billion in sales, working with major corporations like 3M, Disney, and Apple. He's the founder of Hunt Big Sales. He's advised CEOs worldwide and is a sought-after speaker for organizations like Vistage and Inc. magazine. He's also an accomplished author with books such as Whale Hunting and Life After the Death of Selling, and his expertise has been featured in top business publications like the Wall Street Journal and Forbes. Welcome on the show, Tom.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here.
So the topic we came up with was David to Goliath, using brand strategy to land enterprise deals.
Yes.
Now, my first question is, why should anybody care about using brand strategy to use sales, to land enterprise sales, Tom?
Oh, there's so much. First of all, there's been a transition over the course of the last 20 years as to the transfer of trust from a company who is selling to a company that is buying. It used to be a very personal, kind of one-on-one relationship developing kind of circumstance. And that had brand as kind of the secondary position. Selling relationship was first. Over the last 20 years, that has reversed. The brand position in the marketplace, knowing that between referrals and brand information, first meetings occur 93% of the time because those interactions, rather than sales representatives trying to get into and speak to a buyer. So just the dynamic statistically has said that brand and demonstrated expertise has become the reason why those key meetings happen. 87% of the people that are out there won't buy unless they've been introduced. So even if you get the meeting, they still have a kind of a strong desire not to purchase from somebody who doesn't have a strong brand and message.
Mm. And do you think, I mean, that's, there's definitely been this shift, the consumers have more power. And when I say consumers, also people inside businesses, they have more access to information. They can do research now using tools like Perplexity and ChatGPT. They can get huge amounts of information very quickly, so they can make decisions on a much easier thing. How do you see the relationship between, because there's the brand, but there's also then the individual, because there's this new thing that we're seeing sort of emerging, that people not only want to see a company brand and
Right.
see something that they like, but they also want to understand a little bit about the individual or the leader or the leadership team. So the things that have affected OpenAI the most is the things that Sam Altman has done, not the things that OpenAI have done. It's actually the leader that has a little bit more of a sway in that particular thing. So how do you see that relationship playing out in this dynamic of booking meetings and getting sales?
I'm glad you asked that question, because it's the dynamic answers that are going on. But again, I'm going to go back through just a little bit of history and the fact that trust was created by personal relationship. Now trust is created by demonstrated expertise. Demonstrated expertise is strongly brand affiliated. So when you use AI tools to search for someone to help you with a particular issue, or to get an idea of what's going on in the marketplace, and all of those elements, what you are looking for is someone who demonstrates expertise as an individual through formats like LinkedIn and others, and through other kinds of searches which are more industry or specific provider driven. If you're not moving forward your brand with that idea of demonstrated expertise, the best you become, at least on a large frame, is a curiosity, not a preference.
That's an interesting distinction you made there, and I'd like to go a bit deeper on that. This idea of a curiosity versus a preference. Like, what do you see is the difference between a person or a company or a product being a curiosity rather than the preference?
Okay, so let's take you or me, all right? And we go into a LinkedIn environment, or we go into an AI environment, and someone types in a request for one of the kinds of best players in our fields, all right? And it comes back and it gives us a list and it provides, and then we say, okay, source why it is that you're saying that. And it gives all sorts of sources behind that. And before, when I got to the first part of that, I was a curiosity, all right? And then I moved through the issue of who is the better. Now I'm moving towards expertise. And then I can go to the next one. Who has the highest, let's say, ratio of satisfaction, published articles, books revolving around this, and etc. So I've moved from a curiosity or an interest all the way to a choice. And that happened because enough information has been put out in the marketplace to demonstrate that, in fact, you are, when searched, an expert in your field.
And do you think this is now the critical thing that people should be trying to put intention around? Like, what am I displaying expertise in? Like, what is the thing that people know me or my company for?
This is I'm glad we're talking about this right now. I would say to everyone who is out there, stop with the broad brand statement websites that just simply say, we provide the following. The people that are good at that are retail environments, say Walmart and Costco and etc. Those are shopping locations, completely different. If you're in a relationship where you're going to be talking to someone about something complex, then you actually need to drive down what it is that is your complexity. Let me give you an example. So a construction company is out in the marketplace, and they can put together a website, they can publish documents on, they can have materials that they show people that say, we build buildings. All right. And so they build buildings. They'll put pictures of buildings that they've built, and they'll put up case studies or endorsements of buildings they've built. But at the end of the day, the only problem that they say is that I build buildings. All right. So what if your brand was not about building buildings, and you went to the website and it says, we build hospitals, specifically trauma care centers. And we're the best there is at building trauma care centers. And oh, by the way, if you've got other buildings, here's a little click down and you can find out about that. But our brand is trauma care centers. Very different conversation about who you are and what you do. Now, maybe it's not just trauma care centers. I use that as an example right now. But my point is that it's not how broad you go when you're in the large account selling world. It's how narrow you go.
So you think, well, so you're saying that for large enterprise customers, one of their major kind of things is the specificity around, I understand your specific problem, or I understand your specific world and what the complexities of it, and I can show up there in a meaningful way and provide a service that might or might not be generic, but the understanding and the expertise in your specific world is one of the biggest sort of drivers of their perception of you as a potential person to buy from.
Dominantly in the business to business environment. I could give you an example of several companies that are out there that I think are on the consumer side that I just love, that are very, very specific about what they do. There's a company out there, if I can name, called Creepers. And if you go to creepersocks.com, they sell only one thing. No surprise. Socks with toes in it, and they sell it to athletes because it keeps people from having blisters and all the rest of that stuff. Could they sell shirts? Could they sell shorts? Could they sell all the rest of those kinds of things? Could they sell a variety of apparel? Of course. But what are they known for? Specific kinds of socks for running athletes. They're blowing up. Why? Because they've told everyone, this is what I do. If all you wanted was socks with toes, you could just go to Amazon and get it, or go to Costco or any one of the large online retailers. So I'm a fan of specificity, because the broader you are, the brand shifts to the retail environment and away from the product. That's not bad if you then want to be known as, someone who offers everything to everyone. Tougher business to be in because it's a noisy space. And all you need to do is go ahead and type in one search on Amazon, and you will have 75 products to then sort your way through.
Yes. I mean, I made the mistake of downloading the Temu app because they advertised to me enough, and now I know how fast products and services can be duplicated and then sold at like a fraction. You spend your years building this little widget, and then people in Temu see that people are interested in this, and suddenly it's out there, for a third of the price, with beautiful renders. And the funny thing is they even cannibalize each other. So now they see that my store is selling this widget really well. So now there's suddenly 15 other stores that are also selling the same kind of widget. So do you think that the specificity and almost being clear about who we are not for is what helps you sort of survive in that environment?
Are you writing this out and then asking me the question? Because that's exactly what my answer would be. The specificity is how you get above the noise. And if you try to appeal to everyone, you will fall into the quagmire of everyone. The brand distinguishing who you are is in part addition by subtraction. It's by declaring who I'm not. Now, it doesn't have to be an aggressive I'm not. It could just simply be a more robust statement of who you are. And the who you are not kind of drifts, kind of shows up because it's not a part of any of your communication, media, messaging, brand efforts.
It's a fascinating thing, because we've, Nicework, the organization, has been around now for 18 years. And we've been through multiple iterations as a company. At the beginning, we would sort of design anything for anyone,
Right.
and at any price. Now we're a lot more sort of specific. And for a long time, we sort of niched into technology because we are a very technology curious company, and we understand the complexities of it, and we understand the psychology when people are buying something where there's on the client side, there's a high knowledge, there's a deep sort of, we've invented this thing, we've seen this gap, we've built this thing. And then there's someone on this side who doesn't have that same depth of knowledge. And there's always this disconnect. So we thought it was technology for a long time. So we did a lot of work in emergent technology. We did blockchain, we did Web3, we've done a lot of AI stuff. But more recently, interestingly, we've come up with this idea of the people who are working out on the edge, the rebels, the dreamers, the pioneers. These are actually the people, because some of those people are building technology, but some of our other clients are doing health services in a new and interesting way. They're kind of combining things that haven't been combined before, and they're now
Right.
trying to explain this complexity in a short, like in a one sentence, because people go, oh, you're a doctor. No, I'm not a doctor, because we're doing this. And, now we're in the wrong conversation. I'm now trying to layer on the things instead of being able to say, oh, conscious medicine. Oh, like, that's interesting. Tell me, like, I kind of understand what you're saying now. And either I'm going to be like, not for me, or, oh, that's interesting. Tell me a little bit more. I'd like to hear more about what it is that you're saying.
Right. You seem to have, by what you're saying, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth at all, but it seems like you're talking about a layered level of interest. You begin with let me catch your attention, and then you're going to say to yourself, that sounds interesting. I want to be informed more. And then the last part would probably be, how do I become engaged? Do this, set an appointment, or whatever. Now, that would be what I would think about that last statement.
So how does this, your books, Whale Hunting and Hunt Big Sales, it's, I think your if I'm hearing what you're saying, your sort of differentiation is like, yes, you can sell to everyone, but your thing is, how do I sell to big companies? How do I sign big accounts? Like, what is the difference in this differentiation, this positioning, when you're not just selling to anyone, you're trying to sell for really large? Like, how does the whale hunting sort of philosophy come to life in this space?
You start off with assumption number one is that bigger deals and bigger organizations, large Fortune 500,000, buy differently than small companies, which is in fact true. Average company who is going to buy something greater than $1 million will have between 9 and 15 people involved on the buying side. You can't just send in a good salesperson and sell something of that size ticket item. You're going to have peer-to-peer selling. That has to be organized in a particular way. And so we talk about this as a system or a process, not just clever, frequently asked question responses or rebuttals or whatever. It's interesting. There are over 35,000 professional sales training people or companies here in the United States. There are 6 large account selling, enterprise selling companies, of which we're rated in the top 2, depending upon which rating you get. All right. Well, I could be a sales trainer. That could have been my brand. And I could have been one of 30,000 to 35,000 companies. Or I could be in the large account selling space. And that's the one that is, now we've been in this business probably even a little bit longer than you have. And when we first started out, we were pushed very hard by companies saying, just do sales training, get our people to be a little bit bigger. If they sell a $1,000 element, we'd like to have them sell $10,000. Well, things have happened over the course of the last 20 years, and their answer is, I can't afford to sell on cost of sale $1,000 or $10,000, even $100,000. I need us to sell $1 million deals. And our answer is, great. You're going to have to dramatically, significantly change the way in which you sell, rather than the way that you used to. Territorial sales, people knocking on doors, making phone calls, sending out emails and texts, trying to sell everything themselves or sell it with themselves and one technical support person. It doesn't work like that. And one of the reasons it doesn't work like that is that the buying company doesn't buy like that. So when we go to that we went from this enormous marketplace of people that are out there to a very, very tight set of competitors and a very specific group of people who wanted to buy our services.
And I guess, when you get that specificity, you can then build messaging tools that you can be very specific around the language that you use. I watched a documentary on music, different music genres. And what they did is they looked at complexity of sentence structure and complexity of depth of words, like how many words were the artists were using. And the two that were the most deep, as in they were using the most variety of words and the sentence structure was the most complex, was in country and western and R&B. And the reason about that was because the audience is so in the culture. They are so part of country and western, and they understand the stories and the history and so they come in with a broad knowledge. So when somebody makes a light reference in a half sentence, they're conjuring up an entire world of things in people's minds. And then they contrasted that to sort of pop, to billboard hit level stuff, where the sentences got much shorter and the word complexity drops a lot. And it's not saying that pop is worse. It's just pop's audience, 3/4 of pop's audience doesn't speak English as a first language. So now we have to sing in a way that not only appeals to a first language English speaker, but we also have to sing in a way that speaks to an American English speaker, a Canadian, a British person, then somebody who speaks French, somebody who speaks Spanish from South America, somebody who speaks Spanish from Spain. So the complexity that you can afford in your communication diminishes exponentially.
That's fascinating. I think of things like hip hop and rap as maybe being would be interesting to study to the degree that you're talking about because of that. And when you think about whale hunting, which is our first book, it has all the imagery written into it inside of this metaphor of the Inuit and how they hunted whales. And so that story, paralleled, of course, with the process of landing big sails, creates lots and lots of story and imagery. And I wonder if that's part of it. I would imagine that's part of it in the brand that you work on. That element, use that word conscious just a couple minutes ago. And yes, it created in me a sense of what that meant, but it also created in me a sense of what could it mean. I think this is what it means. I wonder what else it could mean. And so that's what brought me in, was that picture, that word picture of that single term.
I think that's exactly it. Isn't this how we get to, and I'm going to ask you a question about the conversational selling because I find that interesting and fascinating, but how do we get through people's initial filter, right? And we've got a concept at Nicework, which is how do we get people to attach importance to something? We need to get them over a line. They need to actually start feeling something about you. They don't have to go from I've met you to we should get married, but they have to go from I met you to, oh, that's interesting. Can you tell me more about that? And then a critical thing is when that story relates to their world. So we say we understand the world of people who are delivering complex things into a market that requires a lot of education, and you can use story to tell that. Now people are not going, oh, tell me more. How many people do you have? They're going, oh, how do you use story to sell complex technology? Now I'm in their world, and now we can have a nuanced discussion around the importance of story, distancing the need for understanding from the complexity of the technology. And it's a balance because we want it to feel slightly complicated because people don't want to feel like it's not difficult to do. So it's got to be a little bit complicated, but it also needs to be, kind of understandable enough that I can then walk back into my company and go, guys, there's this thing that uses these bits, which then solves our problem. Because that's exactly like you say, how do you do that? And I'd love to understand this idea where how do you use conversation and conversational selling to move your idea and your thought through a bigger organization?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you asked simple questions. That one is not simple. I would start off with number one, and that is how to be prepared. And I'm going to just give kind of a list of what I do or we do when we're going to talk to any company in an industry. And that's simply to ask about the industry to an AI environment. Now, we used to have to do all this kind of research and et cetera. It simply said, what are the best terms for defining this industry? And the second thing that we ask is, out of this industry, who are the top performing companies? And then after that, we say, what are the most compelling words that they're using in describing themselves out in the marketplace? And so in that kind of case, it gives us a reference frame. In our case, I'm just modifying it to yours. We use different things than compelling terms, but it gives me a reference frame of what their business is as it compares to other companies and how other companies are talking about that. I don't want to talk about it in the same way that they do, but I want to have the context, because we operate in 27 different industries, of which we are not an expert in any of them, but we are able to, our job is to help them, right? We're industry agnostic. So that's the first thing, is to be prepared in there. The second thing is we look for an opportunity for friction. This may not be very popular, but we look for a place that we can challenge or disagree with our prospect or our customer. It doesn't mean that we challenge them in a way that is offensive, or it doesn't mean that we pick a fight. But we might say, I want to talk to you about that assumption because I believe that there's a more expansive way to consider it. Or I think inherent in what you just said is the opposite of it. So let's look at, you said this, what's the opposite of that? If one were true, the other weren't true. And it's a challenging conversation because it gets beyond me talking about what we do and them talking about what they do and getting into what's the meat of our mind biases, what is the word pictures that we are using, how are we considering the nature of our problem. All of those things come in when you are looking for a point of friction. Because, let's face it, companies hire me and they hire you and they hire the people that are listening to this program. They hire us for change. That's what they pay for. They pay for change. And if they're going to pay for change, we have to demonstrate in our conversation that we understand a need for change and are willing to step forward and talk about change. So having that little bit of friction creates a conversation about change. Otherwise, you just sound like everyone else who says, I do the following things, and here's my case studies of why people love me. And, let's go ahead and just let's find a project that we can start on and see how we work together. That's not about being an expert. That's not about thinking. That's about doing and hoping to prove. Our answer is, if you go in the small door, you're going to get stuck in the small room. And if you solve small problems, you stay with small people. So
I love that.
Yeah.
So you said to me that I need to be prepared.
Yeah.
Then you've said I need my opportunity for friction. So I need to look for something that I can disagree on or challenge you on, or sort of display a different perspective on. What is the next step there?
Next step forward is the big claim or the big dream. And then it says, if you right now are growing at 3%, is your company ready to grow at 12%? Do you have the finances? Do you have the physical capability? Do you have the management team? Do you have, because what I need to know is, when this works, are you ready for it to work? And so it's that dreaming part where they're casting themselves forward and they're going through finance, infrastructure, people, distribution channel, and et cetera, and say, wait a minute, this person I'm talking to right now is saying it's going to work, and they're asking me to make certain I'm ready. It changes the conversation from, are you confident in me, to, are you confident in yourself? So If you think about it, I come in, I know a lot about your company, so much so that I can have a conversation that includes an area of friction, and then I'm going to move you to a conversation of dreaming. Can you do this? And their answer is yes or no, or okay, what's the right number of that? Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit about how you do that specifically in cycle time. Do you want to do that in 3 years, 18 months, 1 year? Because we can double the size of your company if you give me 100 years. But is that how long you want to wait?
Yeah.
And so now we're speaking to a conversation of urgency. We had dreaming as far as size. Then we have a conversation of urgency. We've talked about, is your organization ready to handle it? From this point forward, we can now start to talk about, okay, what you have in the marketplace and what you want to change is significant, because you've already topped out at good ideas executed well by nice and well-intended people. That's why you are where you are right now. So doing that, good effort, smart people working hard, that's gotten you this far. We're going to have to do something significantly different. Are you ready? And I have some ideas about what that would be. I'm going to need to do a deeper dive than what we've done in this conversation. But everything we've said so far, none of it compromises the nature of a relationship or a conversation going forward.
And then how do you get them to, is that I have some ideas on how to solve this and I want to have a deep dive with you? Is that the kind of the step into getting them into a place that they're ready to buy, ready to convert, ready to perceive?
Again, if you're looking for a large opportunity, it's going to take several meetings and several sessions to do that. My statement is, I have some knee-jerk responses. They're good responses to what's going on right now, and they're dangerous. And the reason they're dangerous is because I'm not fully informed. I don't want to give you good answers when great answers are what you need. So I have a process by which we can get through the information, and then our people, my team, and et cetera, can provide you with a methodology, a proposal, a statement of work, or whatever. Most of the time shows up as a presentation of determination of where you stand right now, the status quo, the statement of what the goals are, and then the mechanisms to get there. Not particularly complex in its structure, but again, simple and difficult. Simple to lay out, difficult to get well done.
Yeah, what's it? If knowledge followed action, everyone would have a six-pack.
What do you mean? What?
Yeah, I'm sure you have a six-pack.
There's a reason why.
It's one of those things that it's not everybody knows how to get one, but everyone and it's easy to lay it out. But then when you're actually there at 5 a.m. in the gym and that chocolate brownies in front of you and you have to say no, that's when the real difficulty kicks in.
My approach is to wear very dark clothing.
You said something, and it was interesting because my head was going there. We work with these people that have these complex things, and often in the brand that we build, part of what we do is we try to codify the way they think. So sometimes it shows up as a framework, sometimes it shows up as like a statement, sometimes it's like a multi-step process. And we find that creates, firstly, it gives the customer the feeling they can be bold when they're presenting this, because they're like, this is how we see the world, this is what we think, this is how it works, and it works. But it also gives the customers sort of comfort, because if you spent the time developing a framework or a way of thinking or a process and it's a proprietary thing, it automatically levels up how I perceive this thing that you're doing. So it's not that I'm coming in and I'm going to figure it out and I'll design something. It's like, we've helped people like you, and these are the 5 steps. Like it kind of helps frame that up. Like, where do you see those frameworks, those methodologies coming into your process?
Absolutely critical. It's the interesting thing is that people want this boldness, but they gravitate towards safety.
Mm.
All right. So you say interesting things and exciting things, and you've got supporters who say, I want to go do that. But the default position of many of the people that are involved is to say, too much, too soon, too fast, too big. So what happens is that interest is generated because of the things that you say. Contracts are closed because they feel safe. So part of the conversation is, how do we feel safe? And this takes us back to your codification of a particular process. And we can go, define, design, and develop, and then we can do, messaging, A/B testing. There's lots. I don't mean to get into your chili, but there's lots of ways in which there's a creative element to it, and then there's a practical element to it, and then there's a testing element to it, and then there's a rollout element to it. And let's just say you set those out as 4 or 5 stages, and you can then, based upon that structure, that trunk of a tree, you can then hang the Christmas ornaments of what makes you unique and special at each of those stages. But I think having a clear set of stages, we call it a stage gate process. By having those stages, it helps people to feel safe. They can see one stage, and we call it stage gate because you need to complete all of the elements of one stage before the gate opens to go to the next stage. And in each of those cases, you can see if there's validation, trust, or at least a sense of safety to at least take the next stage.
So I think there's something interesting there. So you think that final decision is safe? Like, how do you find that balance between being new and interesting and innovative and exciting, but at the same time safe? There's a funny saying in our industry, like, no one ever gets fired for hiring Ogilvy. They're not necessarily the best, they're the biggest, and their work is not bad, but it's also not always like there are other companies that have the potential to do much better work, but Ogilvy wins time and time again because no one ever gets fired for hiring them.
Well, in all the companies that I've run, all right, we were always the small company selling against an Ogilvy, but an equivalent company as a competitor to go get big pieces of business. And so selling to the safety was one of the things that we had to. They wanted our benefits. They wanted what our uniqueness was and our bold thoughts and etc. They just needed it that we were as safe a decision as our competitors. We didn't have to be safer. We just had to be as safe as, because then the benefits would trump. So I'll give you one technique if we've got enough time to do it.
Please.
So we're at the point of signing a contract. So I'm talking to the buyer or a group of buyers, and I say to them, let's start at the very end. We're right about to sign the contract. How does that work and who's involved? And I find out who the people are that are involved. Okay, great. That's helpful. The stage before that, I would imagine, would have been some sort of a proposal. Now, who's involved in that? Okay. Now, what do they need to understand to feel comfortable to move this forward to contract? Okay, that's helpful. Okay, great. Before that was a presentation. And so I take them all the way back to this meeting, and I say, because at each step, one of the things that people don't understand is that the further along you get, the difference of what you're looking for actually changes. If you go to buy a car, and the first thing you do is you get in the car, and you don't get in the car. You look at the car, and you say, this is a good-looking car. And maybe you go online and go ahead and find out what the safety rating is. Okay. Then you go up and you sit down in the car, and you start driving around in the car and etc. And now before it was, is it safe? Does it look good? Do I feel comfortable in it? Now I'm starting to ask myself the questions, how does it turn? How does it brake? How does it accelerate? And then I get through the end of that, and then the answer is, okay, fine. How big is the back? How many groceries will it store in there? Can I do these other things with it? Then I get out of the end of that, and now I'm asking myself the question, what's the warranty on this? And what's the gas mileage and all the rest of it? My point being is that the process of making the decision changes as far as the issues of interest along the way. What you said at the reason they were interested and the final reason why they buy are never exactly the same if they're buying something bigger. And so I start with that mechanism going all the way to the very end and working my way back to get to what's the step right after this step. There's a classic statement which says you can't get there from here, but you can get here from there. Let's start off at there and back our way into here.
That's interesting. And I guess you can, from a brand perspective, you can adjust your story depending on the stage. Like, what are people looking for at that moment?
Right.
Interestingly, we've seen, especially when working with large companies, often there's an element of how will I, Ross Drakes, look inside the organization once this piece of work is done.
Yes.
And it's not explicitly stated anywhere, but it's important in the conversation to talk about how we can include them and make them be visible in that process and visible in the success of it, because that is an emotional driver. And obviously there's all the business needs, but each of these people are also in a way thinking about, how am I advancing my career? How am I, I want to be the CTO, CFO, whatever in this company at some point. So I need some kind of big project, big thing that I've done in order to sort of like hang my hat on that people will know and remember.
That's right. Happens a great deal of the time. It's interesting. Everybody wants to be not everybody, but many people want to be in that driver position, but they want a safety net. Yes. I can't tell you the number of CEOs we've dealt with and senior VPs that the first thing they do after we start to work with them on an idea and etc. is they find someone right underneath them to then get involved in the process and the program. Now, we think that we're being delegated down. Well, maybe you are, maybe you're not. But the fact is some of these very, very senior people, they're actually building a scapegoat. So if
I win, it's me, and if I lose, it's you.
That's exactly right, because they get all the credit, and when it goes south, your issue is, I just think the execution. I was busy with these other large issues that were going on. I gave it to John. John, I don't think was 100% clear on this. I was in the initial meetings. I set the goals going forward. I'm a little concerned that maybe John's in over his head. I'll put him on different programs over here. All of a sudden, my issue is not an issue of execution. My issue is an issue of selection or leadership of dealing with someone. And I can even go back and pick this up and give it to someone else if I'm still emotionally committed to it. But you'll notice, and I can tell by the way you laugh, that you've seen this happen on more than one occasion where, why are we getting delegated down? Well, you're getting delegated down, but if you can continue to have the one-on-one meetings or the group meetings with the senior most person, then it's okay to be delegated down, because then that the issue is someone to take care of details and be the scapegoat. If you get cut off completely, then you've lost a lot of power. The size of the decision gets smaller. That person that you've been delegated to is a carrier pigeon of your ideas up to the real buyer, and no one can sell your ideas better than you can. It's a mess.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a couple of questions on the stream. One is, what do you think is the difference between a brand that's ready to sell to big companies and one that's not?
Well, we're in trouble now. Now you're asking for stuff that maybe I don't want to tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Number one is that we have a tendency to sell just a little bit out of an empty wheelbarrow. And what I mean by that is we help companies to see what they can dream, right? And then we help build what they can dream. So that brand actually is pushed out into the marketplace a little earlier than its full complete preparation. All right. The second thing is no brand is completely perfect when it goes out at the very beginning. That's why sample sizes are built into overall programs. even the biggest players that are out there, the Coca-Colas, which we've worked with, and the Disneys and the others, they're all still careful at the point of broad launch. And even then, they still get it wrong. I mean, you may be not old enough, but I am, for New Coke. When New Coke came out, it was an absolute disaster. They'd market tested it. They had flavor tested it. They've done everything. And it absolutely died. And all the branding and everything in the world could not solve the resolute commitment to old Coke. So part of it is that you have to find out whether it's ready to go. You're going to have to take it out into the marketplace and see if the marketplace is ready to respond. It's not the quality of our message; it's the quality of the quality of their response, which helps you to determine whether the brand really has impact and value or not.
That's interesting. And are you measuring the responses to those in the sales conversations or in the meetings too, like how people respond to those things, or are you measuring just how many opportunities you get as a result of being able to tell that story out there?
I'm trying to find one of the things that you've said that I don't like. I want every one of those metrics to fall into place. First and foremost, our buyer has to step into the conversation with the belief, A, that there needs to be a change, and B, that they can't make the change themselves, and C, we're the right people to help them make that change. Then you can start off with the next list, which is, how will we know that we've won? We work an awful lot that says, okay, let's talk about milestone. 60 days from now, how will we know that we've won? 180 days from now, how will we know what we've won? And then the question of winning, of course, is what's the threshold of measure? Did we get this many more clicks? Did we get this many more visits? Did we get this many more purchases? Declared interests, whatever. And that's in your world. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it's interesting. I was reading a thing the other day that YouTube's ad revenue was just under $37 billion last year, which is larger than Netflix. So YouTube, as a media property, is larger than Netflix as a media property. But if you think about the brand, the one that a lot of people, if you go, who's the biggest streamer, who's the most successful streamer, it would be Netflix. And even behind Netflix, there's Disney trying and Apple's trying, and all these people are spending like billions of dollars. Right. And YouTube has made $37 billion. And the kicker is they don't make any of the stuff. they like let other people do it. Like that other people spend all the energy and effort and time. Mr. Beast didn't they only started helping him when he had 100,000, 200,000, right. A million. But he did that all himself. Well, not himself. Him and his team did all that work.
Right. It makes you just a little wistful that why couldn't I take 20 of my closest friends and become YouTuber or Netflix? I know it's bigger than that, but there are moments where you say to yourself, really? Can I make $37 billion doing that? Really? But the answer to the question is yes. So
fascinating. Tom, we are right at the end of the show, and I'd like to ask you sort of one more question. And
okay.
The thing that you said that I found really, really interesting was that you want to start by making people sort of afraid or like scared or showing them this thing, but then build trust. Like how do you see the most effective people doing that, sort of playing that dance with customers?
It starts off with going from a land of agreement to a land of disagreement. By me saying, for example, you and I are talking right now, and you're talking about bold brands and et cetera. You and I could start off with the idea of, hey, I think you and I would agree that out in the marketplace, it's a very noisy marketplace, even for people who are trying to stand out. Would you? I mean, I think we both understand that, and I think I could probably name 5 brands, and you and I would agree that those are kind of muddy brands, like in retail or whatever. Interesting thing is that when we look at your brand, you are probably only one standard deviation away from those commoditized brands. I mean, you really are slipping towards the center, not moving away towards the bold. And I'll give you an example. You know, when I look at it right now, you're using the same name, same logo, same approach, same places as you were using 3 years ago. And that tells me that you're actually receding, not moving forward. And I've got to believe that you've either A, made a decision that you won't move forward, B, you won't go ahead and invest in moving forward, or that you don't know how to move forward. That's an example. Does that help?
That is very helpful. That is very helpful. You've given me some things to think about. I like this idea. I really resonate with this idea of an opportunity for friction, because we always try and encourage our like the founders of the businesses we work with to articulate their point of view, because that is the friction point. Like, that is the thing. You're like, this is the thing I vehemently disagree with, or like I had to make this thing because I hated that. And often that is the emotional trigger that people can, outside of your business, can be like, oh, that also irritates, you know, like I also don't like that, or I agree. And now all I have to do is connect the dots between that feeling and the thing that I've built, which is a much easier solution than going, it's almost taking your same conversation and start at the end and then kind of walk people backwards.
That's right.
Tom, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed our conversation, and we could probably go on for another 45 minutes quite easily. So thank you for coming on the show today.
My pleasure, and would love to come back and spend another 45 minutes. It's been a pleasure. It really has.
We'll definitely do this. So that's it for this episode. We'll be back with more business and branding in the next one. Subscribe to get every episode. Thank you to all our live guests who showed up. And if you want to be able to ask direct questions to people like Tom, show up for the next one and subscribe to be invited. In the meantime, we'd appreciate it if you'd share this episode with someone in your network or leave us a review. 10 More Questions is brought to you by Nicework. We're dedicated to helping people and businesses make a dent in the world through brands that people actually care about. So thank you very much for listening. And until next one, bye-bye. Thank you, Tom.